Hello and welcome to the Software AG Web Methods tutorial series. Today we'll be learning how to create an executable process model in the Web Methods BPM suite. Now let's get started. First, we'll need to start the Designer tool from the Start menu. Designer is an Eclipse-based tool that allows process developers and business analysts to work together to model a business process and link it to an underlying implementation. When Designer starts, you'll want to ensure that you're in the process development perspective. Because the tool is used by both IT and business, perspectives ensure that the user interface is tailored for the job at hand. Business process maps are stored and organized in process projects. So we'll create a new process project. Today we're working with the HR department on some HR-related processes, so we'll create a new project named HR Processes. Now that we have a project that we can use to store our business process maps, let's create a new map that will handle the submission of an application for employment. We'll call this process Employee Pre-Hire. Designer uses the Business Process Modeling Notation standard to draw business process maps. We'll use these BPMN icons next to the process canvas in order to draw a process map. The first thing we'll do is grab a pool and drag that onto the process canvas. This will provide a pool and swim lanes for us to organize the steps in our business process. We'll set this to the internal pool type. This means that all of the steps performed inside of that pool will be performed within our organization. For all of the objects in the process canvas, there'll be related properties down at the bottom. For example, the label of the pool can be changed here. We'll call it Pre-Hire Process. Next, we'll add another swim lane to our pool. Right-click and select Add Swim Lane below. Now we can change the actors of these swim lanes to reflect the folks who will be responsible for executing these pieces of the process. Now we're ready to use the icons at the top and place them within the pool and swim lanes to articulate the business process flow and its logic. Business processes typically start with a message event. This is the trigger that will start a new business process instance based on this map. Let's change the name to better reflect the event that we're responding to. This will be Receive Application. This will be triggered whenever a new hire wants to submit an application for employment. Before the HR specialist can process this application for employment, we'll need to do some simple data validation. The IT team is working on a service to do this, but for now we'll just add a step called Validate Application. Finally, we'll add one more step to the process, and this step will send an email to the applicant letting them know that we've received their application and performed some validation. While Designer supports the shapes and icons from the Business Process Modeling Notation standard, we also extended Designer to allow you to be able to add different imagery to the steps in your process. For our customers, this makes it easier to identify what is happening at each step. So for the Validate step, we'll choose an icon with a check mark. This gives us an indication that at this step, we're checking some of the data. The other step, for sending an email, we'll just pick one of these icons that better represents sending an email. The last thing we need to do is wire these steps together. You'll notice if you hover over any of the icons, it'll bring up some black triangle indicators. You can click and drag these to connect lines between steps in your process. Now we're ready to link the process steps into the ESB implementation. The first thing we'll need to do is switch to the Process Developer view. This will enable us to view the properties to select the implementation behind each of the steps. Let's start with the Receive Application step. If you remember, this is the very first step in the process that's linked to an event in the ESB. To do this, we'll tell the process engine to subscribe to an asynchronous message that will be posted to the messaging broker of the ESB. We'll connect to the ESB and browse to the document or message type that we'll subscribe to in order to kick off a new instance of this process. Next, we'll turn our attention to the Validate Application step. Notice that the step type is initially set to none. This means there is no implementation for this step currently. So what we'll do is right-click and change the step type to Service. Now we've got an extra set of choices in order to tie this step to an integration server service or a web service. To browse the ESB, we pull up the same browser and select a service to be called when that step is executed. There's another way in which we could leverage a service on the ESB within our process. That's by using the Package Navigator. The Package Navigator lets you view the assets that are on the ESB. In the last step of our process, we need to send an email to the applicant letting them know that we received their submission. So what we can do is browse to the SMTP service in the WM Public folder. We can drag that SMTP service onto our canvas and wire that into our business process flow. This will automatically associate that process step with the SMTP service and execute it at runtime. Now that we've linked our process steps to services in the ESB, it's time to deploy this to the process engine. We use the Build and Upload for Execution feature, which will transform our process into executable logic in the engine. The Build Report tab at the bottom of the screen will show you your progress, and at the end, you should receive a successful message. Now we're ready to start executing process instances. We'll switch to the service development perspective so that we can browse through the packages and assets on the ESB. If you remember, we tied the event message, the very first step of our process, to the new hire doc. So what we need to do is right-click and run this as a publishable document. This will send a new hire doc message to the ESB directly from the designer so we can test our process. We'll create some data and click OK. The process engine will receive this message from the ESB and start an instance of our map. Let's take a look. We'll open a browser and navigate to the MyWebMethods server. You'll use the MyWebMethods server to search and view and otherwise interact with your business process instances that are executing or completed. You can also perform other operations, like pausing or resubmitting a failed process. Use the menu on the left to navigate to the Process Instances page. MWS will remember the last page you were on. To see the details of a process instance, click the magnifying glass. We'll see some information about the process, when it started, when it was last updated, and we'll also see the process model overlaid with some status icons like check marks or X's to indicate success or failure. This completes our tutorial. Software AG is the first to offer Enterprise BPM. It allows all process stakeholders, both on the business and IT side, to collaborate around a single process model. Thanks for listening.